Anybody can do something good for like a day. You know? They even teach you a class at New Orleans Baptist Seminary, since Katrina happened, on disaster relief, on learning what to do after something terrible's happened. And you all go out in that class, and I haven't taken it yet, but I've heard about it. You go out, my buddy Shane, you know I've mentioned him before, he went out and had to hammer up drywall, and they had to paint, and they had to rebuild in New Orleans. And you do that for a week. If you go for a workshop, you take that class, and you're there for a week, and you learn a little while in the classroom, and you spend some couple days out there, and then you go home feeling good about everything you did, and you're done. And I got an A, and now I'm moving on to whatever's next, because all I need is a degree. Now, is that what they're really trying to teach you? Nope. But why? Why do I dare say at least 75% of the people that attend that class, why do they leave with that attitude? Selfish. I need a Master's of Divinity, and that class stands in the way of me attaining that. I need to do what they say and move on to what's next, so that I get my Master's of Divinity. Now, I'm speaking this out of complete ignorance. I've never done it. I will have to, but I haven't yet. But see, what I think is that if I take that attitude, which I am telling you right now, I have, I'm just ticking them, I just need them to go. You know, let's get out of this Greek so we can move on to this. Let's get out of this so we move on, and then I'll be done. And what happens is I'm not painting the house of someone who has a story to tell me, who has lost something, who is just thankful that it's being rebuilt. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing 2 more hours and I'm done. Do you see a drastic difference there? Have you ever seen that in your own life? You know why this is significant? It's in the book of Matthew chapter 25. In Matthew chapter 25, somewhere around verse 30, Jesus talks about the judgment. And he talks about people coming up to him, and he says this to them. He says, when I was hungry, now let me know where that is, right? When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was cold, you gave me a place to stay. And the people look at him and say, what? When? When did we do that for you? And what does Jesus say? When you did it for the President of the United States when he visited Louisville, Mississippi, that's when you did it. When you did it for the preacher. He said, when you did it for the least of these, my brothers. Let's just for a minute look beyond the mystery of Jesus equating himself with the least of all mankind, which he did when he said, these were my brothers. Let's just see the significance of Jesus saying, you feed, clothe, and shelter me when you do it to a nobody. And then the opposite happens. People come up, and Jesus says, when I was hungry, you didn't give me anything to eat. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. And when I was cold, you didn't give me a place to stay. And in the same way, they react and say, what? When did we ignore you? We didn't ever turn away from you, Jesus. And Jesus says the exact same thing. When you ignored the least of these, my brothers, you ignored me. That is why what Paul is telling us through the message to the Galatians is infinitely important. Because Jesus says, that's how I see what you're doing today. What you're doing to the least of people is what you're doing to me. Nobody cares that you gave $50 to the King of England because he doesn't need $50. Well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he does now, I don't know. But Jesus Christ cares when you give $5 to someone you've never met, but clearly can see is in a state of need. I tell you today, church, this one issue haunts me. It haunts me. The idea of benevolence. The idea that we have taken such a callous, angry stance towards those in need that we have hardened the ability to give. And we can strip the ink off of a $1 bill when we try to give it to somebody. I mean, they got to pull hard. Because we want to run them through a sieve of tests and questions and considerations on why are you in this position? Or how did you get here in the first place when you had everything given to you? How could you possibly be in so much need? Don't you know you can get a job? And then, oh, righteous people that we are, we pull the Bible out and we say, look here. It says in this book, if you don't work, you don't eat. So I don't have to help you. And it said, Paul even says, a man reaps what he sows. And you reap some drug addiction. And you reap blowing your money in the casino. So now you're sowing destruction, buddy. Bah. I wonder how I have made myself okay with that attitude. And we can sit together and say, but we're not okay with that attitude. And I would believe us that when corporately we look at something that offensive, that we would recoil and say, well, you know, I don't do it that way. I don't do it like that. I mean, if somebody's really in need, oh, see, you've already put some caveat on it. When they're really in need, because with suspicion we look at every hand that's put out in front of us. And I understand. Because it only takes one apple, right? It takes one bad apple to spoil the whole bunch. And so you have one creative person who decides they're going to take advantage of Christian generosity. And that one person takes advantage of you, and then you realize you've been taken advantage of, and guess what? You say to yourself, never again. I recall one time, I was young, 9th grade in fact, I remember. I was going to Tokyo, Japan. It was part of the choir trip at my high school, Ridgeway High School in Memphis, Tennessee. And we were going to Tokyo, Japan. And we were sitting in some lobby, something or other, in the airport in Memphis. And this man walked up to me. I don't know why. I guess because I'm just me. And he walked up to me and he tapped me on the shoulder and he handed me this little pamphlet. And, you know, what's 9th grade? That's like 14, 15 years old. I mean, this is a new babe out in the woods. What's this thing? I don't know. And I read it, and it's about him being part of a group of deaf people who are unemployed and they live in a shelter, and he's passing them out to other people, and it says on the back, you're welcome to keep this pamphlet. We just asked for a monetary donation. Okay. I had a wallet full of money because I was going to Tokyo, Japan. I gave that man a $5 bill. And that man made a sign like, what's thank you? I don't know, but that's what he made. A sign like, thank you. And I just, okay. I would say by the time he's out of earshot, but that's very improper. By the time he was gone away, everyone sitting around me made fun of me. You know he wasn't really deaf. You just got took. That was stupid. You just wasted $5. I felt as embarrassed and small and gullible and taken advantage of as I ever have since in my entire life in that moment when I was 14 years old. And I thought, well, I won't do that again. And I had turned I didn't understand Jesus Christ the way I do now back then. But what I see when I look at that is that helped me turn my back on him. That helped me turn my back on Jesus when he puts people in need in my path, because I can immediately draw on that memory and say, I said never again. I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that again. They're not going to laugh at me. They're not going to look at me like, you gullible dummy. I'm not going to have that anymore. So if you have a need, go somewhere else, because I got Jesus, but you don't get anything else from me. In verse 9, let us not lose heart in doing good. He's reminding us to do good. And I want to read to you what John Calvin wrote. John Calvin, one of the great movers and founders of the Protestant Reformation. He wrote this in regards to this very verse. He said, "This precept is especially necessary because we are naturally lazy in the duties of love, and many little stumbling blocks hinder and put off even the most well-disposed. We meet with many unworthy, many ungrateful people, and the vast number of the needy simply overwhelms us. We are drained by paying out on every side. Our warmth is dampened by the coldness of others. And finally, the whole world is full of hindrances which turn us aside from the right path. Therefore, Paul does well to confirm our efforts so that we do not faint through weariness." And I like, that's a long quote, I know, I won't read it to you again, but I like how Calvin builds them up. He said, first this is a little stumbling blocks, and then it's hindrances all over the place, and then I can't pay this much, I'll go broke, and then the whole world is too many poor people, I can't even do anything. It just keeps building and keeps building all the different excuses about why we won't do anything and why we can't do anything. And I hear Paul say, you can't mock Jesus. You can't give the one who gave everything an excuse about why you couldn't give something. Paul says that we shouldn't lose heart in doing good, but that means that we would have started doing good, right? He wants us not to quit, but to not quit, you have to have begun. The Super Bowl starts, what, I don't know, probably 2 o'clock in the morning next Sunday. I don't know, it's long, and it goes on forever. And you know what they'll talk about during that Super Bowl? They'll talk about the win-loss record of each team, right? They'll say, such and such got this many wins. And such. You know what they'll never talk about? They never discuss the win-loss record of the referee. They never once talk about the win-loss of those who watch. They talk about who won and who lost of the ones who were involved. I hope that goes straight through you. Because we're all a bunch of referees most of the time. And we are observing the world. Oh, look how terrible that is. Did you see that over there? I cannot believe. Well, let's go get our pants dirty. No, I got a dentist appointment next week, and I got to build up some stamina for that. Verse 10, Paul says, "So while we have an opportunity, let us do good to all people, and especially to those who are of the household of faith." While we have the opportunity. You know, in Isaiah 55:6, Isaiah records, "Seek the Lord while he may be found." That gives some sort of understanding that he will not always be found. Does it not? Seek it while it's out there, because it won't always be out there. And ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you 100%, you will not always be able to call on the name